My husband went on a secret trip with his lover and members of her family. When they returned, the house had already been sold. I had packed everything up and moved abroad. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. You know, it's funny how a life can change in a single moment. Not with a bang, but with a quiet buzz from a phone. I've wanted to tell this story for a long time, but it's taken me a while to find the right words, to be able to look back without the anger, without the pain. It's a story about marriage, about the kind of betrayal that cuts deeper than bone, and about finding a strength you never, ever knew you had. It's my story. And it all started on a quiet Wednesday evening, the kind of evening that feels so devastatingly normal, you'd never guess your entire world is about to be set on fire. I was setting the last platter of roasted chicken on the dining room table when my phone buzzed. The chicken skin was golden brown and crispy, just the way Richard liked it, and the whole house smelled of rosemary and garlic. I had spent the better part of the afternoon cooking, carefully arranging the table with our good china, even lighting a couple of candles. He'd been so stressed at the law firm lately, and I just wanted to create a little pocket of peace for us, a nice meal where we could reconnect. I remember smiling as I picked up the phone, thinking he was calling to say he was just a few minutes away. A quick glance at the screen showed his name, and I felt that familiar little flutter of warmth. Hello, I answered, wiping my hands on a dish towel as I hit the call button, ready to tell him to hurry home before the food got cold. Carolyn, we need to talk. Richard's voice was as calm and distant as if he were discussing tomorrow's weather. There was no warmth, no affection. Just flat, matter-of-fact. The kind of voice you use with a subordinate, not your wife. My smile faltered. Is everything okay? I asked, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Everything's fine, he said, and the casualness of it was a cruelty in itself. Listen, next week on Wednesday, the whole family is heading to Palm Springs for a week. I've already booked the plane tickets and a vacation rental. The platter in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. My knuckles went white as I gripped the phone, the edge of the ceramic digging into my palm. A sudden, familiar tightness clenched in my chest, a feeling I knew all too well. This was the third time. The third time in 3 years of marriage. My own voice, when it came out, sounded unnaturally placid, like the eerie calm before a storm. I was determined not to let him hear the tremor in my hands. The whole family, you say, I repeated, my gaze drifting over the 2 perfect place settings on our dining table. So, your parents, your sister Diane and her new boyfriend, your aunt, and your cousin. That's 6 people. I forced a deliberately cheerful tone, the kind you use when you're desperately trying to pretend your heart isn't sinking into the floor. That's right, he said, oblivious. The rental I booked only has 3 bedrooms, and if there are too many of us, it'll be a hassle, so you don't have to come. A hassle. That's what I was. Not his wife, not a daughter-in-law, not family. A logistical inconvenience. I took a deep, shaky breath, my eyes scanning the meticulously prepared meal on the table. The steam was rising from the garlic mashed potatoes. All that effort, all that care, all my hopes for a quiet, healing dinner together, was now destined for the garbage. Oh, I see, I said, my voice sounding like a distant echo even to my own ears. It felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching a stranger have this conversation. Well, you all have a wonderful time. I knew you'd understand, Carolyn. You're the most accommodating person I know. I could hear his sigh of relief through the phone, and it felt like a physical slap in the face. Accommodating. He meant compliant. He meant I wouldn't make a scene. Oh, and while I'm gone, don't forget to water the flowers in the garden and my succulents. The little one on the windowsill is looking a bit dry. Right. Okay. The succulents, I repeated numbly. I hung up, standing frozen in the middle of the dining room. The phone screen went black, and it felt like a light had been extinguished inside my heart. The third time. The first time, the excuse was that I had just suffered a miscarriage, and a long trip would be too much for me. I was grieving, vulnerable, and I believed him. Of course, he was just being protective. The second time, my job was too demanding, and it would be hard to take time off. I was disappointed, but I accepted it. I needed to be supportive of his need for a family vacation. This year, he hadn't even bothered with a convincing excuse. I was just a hassle. Slowly, like an automaton, I began to clear the table, scraping the untouched food into the trash can. The beautiful roasted chicken, the creamy potatoes, all of it. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. Suddenly, a plate slipped from my grasp. I watched it fall in slow motion before it hit the tile floor and shattered into 100 pieces. The sound echoed in the silent house. The shards scattered across the tile, glittering under the kitchen lights like jagged little diamonds. I just stared at them. They looked so much like me at that moment. A marriage that seemed so brilliant and perfect on the outside, yet crumbled into nothing at the slightest touch. My phone buzzed again, making me jump. It was the family group chat. A message from my mother-in-law, Mrs. Peterson. "Guys, we're doing Palm Springs again this year. We leave Wednesday, so don't forget the sunscreen. They say it's going to be hot." A flurry of celebratory emojis followed from Diane, his aunt, his cousin. I stared at the words. The whole family. My eyes welled up with hot, angry tears. To them, I wasn't family. I was just a stranger, an unpaid housekeeper who watered the succulents. I sank to the floor, my knees pressing against the cold, hard tile, and began to pick up the ceramic pieces one by one. I didn't even notice when a sharp edge sliced my finger, not until I saw a single drop of bright red blood well up against the white porcelain. The physical pain was a dull throb, nothing compared to the sharp, twisting ache in my soul. My phone rang again, and the sound made my whole body flinch. It was my best friend, Brenda, on a video call. I quickly wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, took a shaky breath, and tried to plaster a smile on my face before I answered. "Brenda. Hey. You wouldn't believe the angry client who came into the office today," I started, trying to launch into some normal, everyday story to cover the cracks in my voice. Brenda's cheerful expression faded instantly. She squinted, bringing her face closer to her phone's camera. "Carolyn? What's wrong with you? Your eyes are all red. Are you crying?" "What?" "No, of course not," I lied, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle and fake even to my own ears. "I was just cutting an onion for dinner and they started stinging like crazy." It was the oldest, weakest excuse in the book, and we both knew it. "Don't lie to me, Carolyn. You think I've known you for more than 10 years for nothing?" Brenda's brow furrowed with that look of fierce concern I knew so well. "I can see right through you. What did that jerk Richard do this time?" Under her piercing, loving gaze, my carefully constructed armor just crumbled into dust. The fake smile dissolved. In a few hushed words, my voice dropping to a raw whisper, I explained everything. The special dinner, the cold phone call, the flimsy excuse, the shattered plate. I feel like I'm being made a fool of," I finished, the words catching in my throat, heavy with a shame I couldn't explain. "You? It's Richard and his whole damn family who are making fools of themselves." Brenda's voice was sharp with an anger that, strangely, felt like a warm blanket. She was angry for me. "Carolyn, for God's sake, wake up. These people don't see you as family." I fell silent. Deep down, I already knew it. I just didn't want to admit it to myself, because admitting it meant admitting my marriage was a failure. 3 years ago, at our stunning wedding at that beautiful vineyard, Richard had knelt before all our friends and family and promised me a lifetime of happiness. The image was still so vivid in my mind. How had we gotten here in the blink of an eye? Carolyn, Brenda's voice suddenly turned serious, all business. You remember you signed a prenup, right? I nodded, feeling a chill. It was a month before the wedding. Richard had suddenly brought it up, claiming it was a family tradition, a formality for his family's legal practice. Although it made me uncomfortable, I signed it. I loved him. I wanted to prove to him and his family that I wasn't after his money. What a fool I was. The house is in your name, right? That's clear property, she pressed, her eyes narrowed. It was a wedding gift from my parents, I explained, the words tasting like ash. They paid the entire down payment. The inheritance from my grandmother. We registered it as my separate asset, only in my name. But, after we got married, Richard kept insisting we add his name to the deed. He said it was for appearance's sake, that all his colleagues at the law firm had their names on their deeds and it was embarrassing for him. Brenda's forehead wrinkled in disgust. And you did it? I did, I whispered. He wore me down. Okay, she said, taking a breath. Listen to me carefully. This is important. Who paid for the renovation? Mostly me, I admitted, feeling smaller with every word. I used the money I'd saved from my salary over the years. About $70,000. His family contributed about $15,000, mostly for the new patio furniture. Do you have proof? Receipts? Contracts for the work? Yes, I said, a tiny spark of something igniting within me. I'm meticulous. I kept a folder with everything. Good. That's very good, Brenda said, a hint of relief in her voice. She paused, then asked another question that made my stomach drop. How much does Richard actually earn? Do you have any idea? The question left me blank. Since we got married, we'd each managed our own money. It was his idea. He said it was more modern. He had told me his salary was about $100,000 a year. He gave me $100 a month for household expenses. The rest, he said, he was investing for our future. Anne. I've been paying the mortgage on the house, I added, my voice trailing off. All of it. Every month. The words sounded utterly ridiculous, even to me. He said he had to have a cushion for medical expenses for his aging parents. Brenda slammed her hand on her desk. I heard the thud through the phone. Carolyn. For the love of God. Don't you realize they're scamming you? That's not a normal marriage. That's financial abuse. My eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were hot with anger, not just sadness. It was true. To the world, I was the woman who lived in a luxurious house, the wife of a successful lawyer. But the reality was I had to think twice before buying a new winter coat. Meanwhile, just last Christmas, Richard had gifted his mother a $20,000 gold bracelet without a second thought. My life was a lie, a carefully constructed illusion, and I was the one paying for it. After I hung up with Brenda, I sat on the cold kitchen floor for a long time, surrounded by the wreckage of my dinner and my marriage. Brenda's words echoed in my head, wake up. Protect yourself. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, a cold resolve settled over me. I got up, washed my face, and walked directly to Richard's office door. In my jewelry box, hidden beneath some old trinkets, was the emergency key he'd given me years ago, just in case. When we got married, we promised to respect each other's privacy. I had never once considered breaking that promise. Tonight, I was going to shatter it into a million pieces. The sound of the key in the lock seemed unnaturally loud, a gunshot in the silent house. When I opened the door, a faint smell of expensive men's cologne hit me. The office was impeccably tidy, almost sterile. Law books on the shelf were arranged by height, a perfect, rigid line. There wasn't a speck of dust on his large mahogany desk. I started with the drawers, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The top one held a few unimportant work documents and some fancy pens. The middle one contained several photo albums, and my stomach clenched as I flipped through them. They were almost all pictures of Richard with his family, at holidays, on previous vacations, at his sister Diane's graduation. There were only a handful of photos of the two of us together, tucked away at the very back. The bottom drawer was locked. Of course it was. The anomaly only confirmed my growing suspicions. My eyes scanned the room, searching. And then I saw it. Tucked behind a row of thick legal books on the bottom shelf was a small, black metal safe. Richard had bought it last year, claiming it was to store important, confidential client information from his law firm. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I knelt down, my hands shaking. I tried our anniversary date. A small red light blinked. Error. I tried his birthday. Error. I felt a surge of despair. What else could it be? Then, a bitter thought crossed my mind. On a whim, my fingers trembling with a mix of anger and dread, I entered his mother's birthday. The safe opened with a soft, electronic click. Inside, there was a stack of well-organized documents. On top of everything was a thick manila folder labeled property. My heart went cold as I opened it and pulled out the property deed. It was the deed to my house, the house my parents' inheritance had paid for. But under the owner section, it clearly stated Richard Peterson and Carolyn Miller, in joint tenancy. My breath caught in my throat. I remembered the day we went to the lawyer's office to add his name. It was supposed to be a tenancy in common, giving him a small minority share. This was different. Joint tenancy meant he had right of survivorship. It meant he owned half of everything. My parents' legacy, my life savings, half of it was legally his. He had tricked me. My hands trembling so hard I could barely pick up the papers, I continued searching. I found several bank statements from an account I never knew existed. I unfolded the first one. The balance at the bottom of the page stunned me into silence. It wasn't the comfortable, but modest, savings I would expect from his salary. It was nearly $1.5 million. My eyes scanned the transaction history. Every single month, there were regular wire transfers, ranging from $3,000 to as much as $15,000, to an account under the name Heather Jones. At the bottom of the stack of documents was an elegant, dark blue velvet jewelry case. I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of white satin, lay a diamond necklace so brilliant it stole my breath. I had never seen it before in my life. Tucked underneath was the receipt. It was from Tiffany's. The price exceeded $25,000. The purchase date was October 12th of last year. My birthday. My gift from Richard that day had been a simple bouquet of flowers from the grocery store. Under the case was one last thing. A photograph. Richard was at a beautiful resort pool, his arm wrapped tightly around a smiling, bikini-clad young woman. They were wearing matching swimsuits. On the back, in my husband's familiar, looping handwriting, was a note, "To my love, Heather. Palm Springs, August 2023. That was the exact week he had claimed to be on a stressful business trip in Chicago. My world didn't just crash. It vaporized. All his late nights at the office, the mysterious business trips, the constant talk of being broke while living in my house, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The vibration of my phone on the desk almost made me scream. It was a text from Richard. "Honey, I won't make it for dinner tonight. Have a work dinner." I stared at the message, then looked at his profile picture. He was sitting in a luxurious restaurant, holding a glass of red wine. Reflected in the curve of the wineglass was the unmistakable silhouette of a woman with long hair and a hand with bright red painted nails resting on the table. In that moment, all the grief and confusion vanished, replaced by a strange, icy calm. I wasn't paranoid or overly sensitive. I was just an idiot who was being played for a fool. Calmly, methodically, I took out my phone. I took pictures of every single page, every single document, every single damning piece of evidence. I sent them all to Brenda's encrypted email account. Then I put everything back in its place, closed the safe, and left the office, shutting the door on 3 years of lies. Richard came home around 10 o'clock that night. I was sitting on the living room sofa in the dark, waiting. I had been sitting there for hours, the photos on my phone burning a hole in my mind. He stumbled in, smelling of expensive alcohol and a sweet, floral perfume that wasn't mine. "Honey, you're still awake," he slurred, fumbling with his shoes. He came over to where I was sitting and leaned in to kiss me. I turned my head away, and his lips met the cold air. "You smell like perfume." "I don't like it," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. Richard paused for a moment, surprised, and then let out a short, dismissive laugh. "It was for work, honey. You know how it is." It must have rubbed off on me a little. Those clients were really strong cologne. "Oh, really?" I looked up at him, my eyes having adjusted to the dark. I could see his face clearly. "Is that Heather a client, too?" His expression froze. The drunken, jovial mask slipped, and for a second, I saw pure panic in his eyes. His whole body seemed to sober up instantly. "What? What are you talking about? Who's Heather?" "Nothing," I said, standing up. The scent of her perfume was making me sick. It just occurred to me. You must be exhausted, having to entertain that client so many times a month, taking her on all those business trips. I walked past him and went straight into our bedroom, leaving him standing there in the living room, his face shifting from red to white under the dim light. As I closed the bedroom door, I leaned against it, my legs feeling weak. I heard his nervous footsteps outside, and then his voice, a frantic, hushed whisper on the phone. He was undoubtedly calling Heather, warning her, trying to get their stories straight. A few minutes later, a message from Brenda lit up my phone. "Evidence received. Holy cow, Carolyn. With this, he's done. Come to my office first thing tomorrow. And this time, listen to everything I say." I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. My mind was strangely, terrifyingly calm. The old Carolyn would have spent the night weeping, her heart shattered. The Carolyn lying there now just felt like laughing. A cold, bitter laugh. Richard eventually opened the door and slipped into bed beside me, careful not to make a sound, as if nothing had happened. He deliberately held his breath, pretending to be asleep in the darkness. "Richard," I broke the silence suddenly, my voice cutting through the quiet room. "What resort are you going to in Palm Springs?" His body tensed visibly beside me. "Just a normal resort. One that the law firm has a deal with." "Oh, really?" I let out a small, humorless chuckle. "It's not the Oasis Club again, is it? I've heard the private villas with the pools there are super expensive." Richard sat bolt upright in bed with a gasp. "Have you been spying on me?" "Spying?" I turned to look at him. The moonlight filtering through the blinds illuminated his face, which was twisted by a mixture of panic and anger. "Is there a need?" "You forgot to block me on Facebook, Richard. Your check-in at the Oasis Club, November of last year. By the way, the Tiffany's necklace in the picture Heather posted that week was beautiful. A very generous gift." His face contorted into an ugly snarl. "Carolyn, how dare you go through my phone? Compared to you cheating on me for years, stealing my inheritance, and lying to my face every single day, me looking at your public social media isn't a big deal, don't you think?" I got up and turned on the bedside lamp, flooding the room with harsh light. 3 years of marriage with separate accounts. 3 years I've been an idiot, serving your entire family, paying the mortgage on my own house, and it turns out you had someone else on the side the whole time. Richard, you really don't disappoint me." His face went pale. Suddenly, a wave of rage washed over him. He grabbed a pillow and threw it with all his might against the wall. Stop it. Just stop it. Do you think I did it because I wanted to? Do you? I'm sick and tired of coming home every day and seeing that long, sad face of yours. Heather is 100 times more affectionate than you. She's fun. She knows how to make a man happy. I watched his mad outburst in silence. And in that moment, all the remaining love I had for him just shriveled up and died. This was the man I had defied my parents for to marry. A coward, a liar, and a thief who, after being caught, still had the audacity to blame me. All right, I said, my voice light, almost cheerful. Let's get a divorce. You can go be happy with Heather, and I'll live my life in peace. Divorce? Richard burst out laughing, a loud, ugly sound that filled the room. In your dreams, Carolyn. You signed the deed. Half of this house is mine. If you file for divorce, how are you going to live? Your measly salary won't even cover the mortgage, let alone buy me out. So, that was it. His master plan. He had it all figured out. He was sure that I was financially trapped, that I would never dare to leave him. Seeing that smug, confident look on his face, I just laughed. Well, I said, smiling sweetly at him. We'll see about that. I lay back down, turned off the light, and turned my back on him. Carolyn, he finally said, his voice low and menacing through the darkness. Don't you dare do anything stupid. I mean it. My sister Diane is getting married, and she needs a place. I've had my eye on this house for her for a while now. I closed my eyes, my nails digging so hard into my palms that I was sure I'd drawn blood. The whole family had planned this for a long time. They wanted to use me, live in my house, and in the end, kick me out and take it for his sister. At dawn, I got up quietly. I packed a small bag with my essentials and all the important documents I could find. Then, I left the house without looking back. The morning air was exceptionally fresh, like the world had been washed clean overnight. I took a deep, shuddering breath and called Brenda. It's time, I said. The war has begun. Brenda's office was on the 28th floor of a gleaming glass skyscraper in downtown LA. This wasn't just my best friend's solo practice anymore, she had become a partner at a prestigious firm, one of the best in the city. When I arrived, she wasn't alone. With her was a man in his late 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes, a perfectly tailored suit, and an air of calm authority. Carolyn, this is Mr. Wallace, Brenda said, her voice firm and reassuring. He's the best divorce lawyer in the state. He specializes in cases with significant financial assets and complications. Mr. Wallace shook my hand, his grip strong and steady. Ms. Miller. Brenda has briefed me on the situation. I am very sorry for what you are going through. Now, let's see what we're working with. We sat in a large, sunlit meeting room, the digital copies of the evidence I had photographed spread out on a large screen. Mr. Wallace reviewed each document with meticulous concentration, his expression growing more grim with every slide. The situation is even worse than you thought, he said finally, taking off his glasses and polishing them with a handkerchief. According to these bank statements, over the last 2 years, Richard has transferred a total of $330,000 to this Heather person. In the eyes of the court, this is a clear act of dissipation of marital assets. That is a significant sum we can claw back in the divorce settlement. I just nodded in silence, the number echoing in my head. $330,000. The equivalent of nearly 5 years of my salary, and he had given it away so easily. But this, Mr. Wallace said, clicking to a new set of documents his firm's investigator had pulled overnight, this is the most serious offense. He pointed to the screen. 3 months ago, Richard took out a second mortgage on your property for $800,000. The purpose listed on the application was home renovation. But you didn't have any recent renovation plans, did you? $800,000? I looked up in shock, my blood running cold. He didn't say a single word to me. He wasn't going to tell you, Mr. Wallace said gravely. Because that money, 1 week after it entered his account, was transferred to Heather Jones in 5 large installments. I believe your husband bought that woman a house. He used the equity from your house, the home built on your family's inheritance, to buy a property for his mistress. My voice trembled. He had leveraged the home my parents gave me, a place I thought was my sanctuary, to set up a life with another woman. Mr. Wallace then showed me a transcript of text messages between Richard and his sister, Diane. His investigator had gotten them through a special channel, and while they might be difficult to use as direct evidence, they painted a very clear picture of their intentions. Diane, bro, did you tell your wife about the mortgage on the house yet? Richard, not yet. Planning to tell her after the trip. She's been a little weird lately. Think she suspects something with Heather. Diane, so what? My fiancé and I need to make a down payment for the condo we saw next week. Don't drag your feet. Richard, don't be in such a hurry. My name is on the deed to the house, too. Even if she objects, she can't do anything. If she gets difficult, I'll tell Mom to talk to her. She always listens to Mom. I stared at the screen, a heavy rock crushing my chest. They had planned it all. Legally, to get a mortgage on a property with joint tenancy, the consent of just one of the owners is sometimes enough, especially if he forged her signature, which I suspect he did, Mr. Wallace said seriously. If they had finalized everything first, you would be in a very difficult, very expensive legal battle. Then what do I do now? I clenched my fists, my knuckles white. We beat them to it, a sharp, determined light gleamed in Mr. Wallace's eyes. We have to prove the joint tenancy deed itself was forged. You said you remembered it being a tenancy in common? I am absolutely sure of it, I said. I remember the lawyer explaining the difference very clearly. This is our turning point, Mr. Wallace exclaimed, a hint of excitement in his voice. If we prove the deed was falsified, not only would the fraudulent mortgage be void, but Richard could face serious criminal charges for bank fraud and forgery. We laid out the battle plan right then and there. Step 1, I had to go to the county recorder's office immediately to get a certified copy of the original, valid deed. Step 2, with that proof, we would file for an emergency restraining order to freeze every single one of Richard's assets, bank accounts, stocks, everything. Step 3, we would prepare the divorce petition, outlining every single one of his transgressions. As I was leaving, a whirlwind of legal terms and strategies spinning in my head, Brenda gave me a set of keys. It's a small apartment I keep for investment. It's empty now. Stay there for a while. Don't go back to the house. A cornered animal is a dangerous one, and Richard is about to feel very, very cornered. The next morning, I walked into the county recorder's office, a large, impersonal government building that smelled of old paper and stale coffee. My hands were clammy as I filled out the request form and handed it to the clerk, along with my ID and the property information. I felt like I was holding my breath for the entire 10 minutes it took him to shuffle through files in the back room. My entire future felt like it was hanging in the balance, dependent on a piece of paper filed 3 years ago. Finally, he returned and slid a certified copy across the counter. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it right there, my eyes scanning the dense legal text. And then I saw it, in clear, unmistakable black and white, tenancy in common. Carolyn Miller 70%, Richard Peterson 30%. A wave of relief so powerful it almost made my knees buckle washed over me. I hadn't been crazy. I hadn't misremembered. He had deliberately, criminally, falsified the document. I immediately filed a lost deed report, a legal maneuver Mr. Wallace had explained would instantly invalidate the forged copy in Richard's possession. Then, I filled out an application for a prohibition on disposition. In the reasons section, I wrote the words with a steady hand, alleged falsification of documents and suspected fraud by the co-owner. The house, my house, was finally safe. I left the building and walked to a small, greasy spoon diner across the street. I ordered a black coffee and just sat in a cracked vinyl booth, watching the steam rise from the thick ceramic mug. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the tight knot of fear in my stomach began to loosen. It was the first move in a chess game I never wanted to play, but it was a damn good one. Check. Just then, as I was taking my first sip of the bitter coffee, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something told me to answer it. "Is this Ms. Carolyn Miller?" a cheerful, professional voice asked. "This is Susan from Sun Realty. I'm calling about the listing for your house on Oakwood Lane. We have a fantastic cash offer, a buyer who is willing to pay $1,150,000. They want to close quickly. When can we meet to negotiate?" I was stunned into silence. The coffee cup clattered against the saucer. He had already put our house, up for sale. He was going to sell it out from under me while he was on vacation with his mistress. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left me speechless. A cold, hard rage, clearer and more powerful than any emotion I had ever felt, settled over me. "Listen to me very carefully, Susan," I said, my voice low, steady, and deadly serious. "That listing is fraudulent. My husband does not have the authority to sell that property. The deed he showed you has been reported as lost and is legally invalid. This property is currently in litigation, and a prohibition on disposition has been filed with the county. If your agency proceeds one step further with this transaction, be prepared to receive a lawsuit from my lawyers for colluding in real estate fraud." There was a choked sound on the other end of the line, and then a hurried apology before she hung up. I put down my phone and took a long, slow breath. That was close. Too close. I immediately called Mr. Wallace to update him. Then, I made my next call. It was to a moving company. That afternoon, 2 large trucks pulled up to the house on Oakwood Lane. The process of packing was methodical and strangely therapeutic. I walked through the rooms, deciding what was mine and what was a part of the lie I was leaving behind. The books from my college years, the paintings I'd bought at local art fairs, the clothes I'd purchased with my own hard-earned salary. I left behind everything he had ever given me, the jewelry, the clothes, the furniture. It wasn't much. As the movers loaded the last box onto the truck, I took one final look at the place I once called home. I didn't feel a single ounce of nostalgia. Just the quiet satisfaction of a door closing firmly and forever. I locked the front door with my key, walked to the community gatehouse, handed the key to the doorman, and informed him that any future matters related to the house should be handled through my lawyer, Mr. Wallace. My new life had officially begun. A week later, I was sitting in Mr. Wallace's sunlit office, reviewing the final draft of the divorce petition, when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from a tracking app Brenda had helped me install on Richard's flight itinerary. His plane from Palm Springs had just landed at LAX. The first sign of trouble for him came, as I later learned, at the airport rental car counter. I could almost picture it, Richard, tanned and smug from his week-long vacation with Heather, confidently handing over his American Express black card, only for it to be declined. The confusion on his face, the flicker of annoyance. He would have tried another card, then another. The growing impatience of the clerk, the line of people behind him starting to grumble. The ultimate humiliation for a man like Richard. The restraining order had worked. Every single one of his assets was frozen solid. They must have taken an expensive cab, because 2 hours later, the doorman from my old community called me, his voice strained. "Ms. Miller, Mr. Peterson and his family are here. His parents and his sister are with him. They're making quite a scene." Mr. Wallace and I headed there immediately. We could hear them before we even saw them. From a block away, my former mother-in-law's shrill, piercing voice cut through the quiet afternoon air of the manicured suburb. "My son is the owner of this house. His name is on the deed. Why won't you let him in? Did that woman bribe you? I demand to speak to your manager." We walked into the gatehouse to find the entire Peterson clan in a full-blown meltdown. Richard's face was a mottled shade of purple with rage. His sister Diane stood beside him, arms crossed, glaring at the doorman with contempt. His parents were shouting, red-faced and belligerent. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and stepped forward. "Father-in-law, mother-in-law," I said, my voice perfectly calm and clear, cutting through their tirade. "It's been a while. How was the trip to Palm Springs?" I allowed a small, knowing smile to touch my lips. I saw the photos. That family picture with Heather turned out beautiful. All four of them spun around in unison. Their faces were a priceless gallery of shock, guilt, and fury. "Carolyn!" My mother-in-law, recovering first, let out a shriek and lunged at me, her hands clawed, aiming for my hair. "How dare you, you ungrateful, wicked woman, treat my son this way?" Before she could reach me, Mr. Wallace stepped smoothly between us, blocking her path with his solid frame. "Ma'am, I am going to ask you to control yourself," he said, his voice low but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "Assaulting a person is a crime. And I must inform you, we are recording this entire situation." My mother-in-law's hand froze in midair. The color drained from her face, and she stumbled back. Well, Richard sneered, pushing his mother aside and stepping forward until he was just inches from my face. I could smell the stale airplane air on him. "So now you're bringing your high-priced lawyer to confront your in-laws. What exactly do you want, Carolyn?" "It's very simple, Richard," I said, looking him directly in the eyes, refusing to be intimidated. "I want a divorce. And I want to get back every single penny and every single asset that belongs to me." "Don't you dare dream of it," he yelled, spit flying from his lips. "My name is on the deed. That house is half mine." "Oh, really?" I pulled a folder from the leather briefcase Brenda had given me. I calmly opened it and presented him with the certified copy from the recorder's office. "This is the original, legally filed registration. The house is a tenancy in common. My share is 70%, your share is 30%. It's clearly specified. The joint tenancy document you've been using is a forgery. Which, by the way, is a felony." Richard's face went completely white. He stared at the paper as if it were a snake. "And that's not all," I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. "You forged my signature on an $800,000 mortgage contract, that's bank fraud. You transferred over $300,000 of marital assets to your mistress. According to California law, in a divorce with proven fault of this magnitude, not only would you not be entitled to any part of the house, but you will have to pay me back for every dollar you stole, plus damages." His mother couldn't take it anymore. "That's impossible. My son has been supporting you for years." "You ungrateful." "Supporting me?" I laughed, a real, bitter laugh that came from deep in my belly. "Mrs. Peterson, for 3 years, I have paid the mortgage, the property taxes, the electricity, the water, and the HOA fees myself. Your son gave me $100 a month for household expenses, an amount that didn't even cover his own food and alcohol." The entire Peterson family was speechless. Richard suddenly lunged forward, trying to snatch the folder from my hands, but Mr. Wallace stopped him with a firm hand on his chest. He looked like a cornered, rabid animal. "Carolyn, don't you push me," he hissed. "I know a lot of powerful people. I can make it so you can't find a job in all of LA." Threatening the opposing party in a legal dispute, Mr. Wallace said calmly, holding up his phone where a red light was clearly blinking. "Mr. Peterson, this recording will be very damaging evidence against you in court." The fight seemed to drain out of Richard all at once. The rage and arrogance vanished, replaced by a desperate, sniveling panic. Tears welled up in his eyes. "Carolyn, honey, I'm so sorry," he whimpered, reaching for my hand. "I was wrong. I was an idiot. Please, just give me one more chance. I'll leave Heather. I swear. I'll do whatever you say." I looked at the man crying in front of me, the man I had once loved more than life itself, and I felt nothing but a cold, vast emptiness. "It's too late, Richard," I said calmly, pulling my hand away. "I've given you far too many chances." As expected, Richard didn't sign the divorce papers. His begging and pleading had been nothing but a performance. When that failed, he reverted to his true nature, that of a bully. He launched a vicious smear campaign. He posted a long, tearful message on Facebook, full of half-truths and outright lies, insinuating that I was mentally unstable and had left him for a richer, more successful man. Suddenly, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were calling me, leaving tearful voicemails, telling me I was destroying a good man and breaking up a family that I needed to forgive and forget. It was pathetic, a coordinated attack orchestrated by his mother, but I was prepared for it. I blocked the numbers, deleted the messages, and focused on the legal battle ahead. The most dangerous moment, however, came on a rainy Tuesday night. I was at the house on Oakwood Lane, packing up the last of my personal, sentimental belongings. I had sold the place, and the new owners were scheduled to do their final walkthrough in 2 days. The house was mostly empty now, the rooms cavernous and echoing with every footstep. The rain lashed against the windows, and the wind howled outside. I was feeling a little on edge, but I just wanted to get this final task over with. Suddenly, the back patio door crashed open, the glass shattering inwards. Richard and his sister, Diane, burst in, soaked from the rain. He reeked of whiskey and desperation, and his eyes were bloodshot and wild with rage. "Carolyn," he snarled, his voice a low, menacing growl. "You've ruined my life. My career is in jeopardy, my accounts are frozen. So now, I'm going to ruin yours." Diane, her face a mask of cold, malicious glee, raised her phone and started recording. "Sister-in-law," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You'd better call your lawyer and drop the lawsuit right now. If not, this video of your emotional reconciliation with my brother is going to go viral tomorrow. No one will believe your story then." I understood their vile plan instantly. They were going to fake a forced reconciliation, probably assault me, and use the video to blackmail me, to destroy my credibility. My heart was pounding against my ribs so hard it felt like it would break through. For a split second, pure terror seized me. But then, all the pain and humiliation of the last 3 years coalesced into a single point of cold, hard fury. "Richard, do you have any idea what you're doing?" "This is a crime," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "A crime?" he scoffed, taking a menacing step toward me. "What crime can there be between a husband and a wife? I'll tell you what, after tonight, whether you drop the lawsuit or not, you're finished." The moment he lunged at me, his hands reaching for me, I pressed the small, discreet panic button I had in my pocket. A piercing, deafening alarm, loud enough to wake the dead, screamed through the empty house. Richard and Diane froze, their faces a comical picture of shock. At the exact same time, the front door burst open and 2 large, powerfully built men, private security guards Mr. Wallace had insisted I hire for this very reason, stormed into the room. They had been on discreet guard in the house next door, just waiting for my signal. In seconds, they had Richard and Diane pinned to the floor, their arms twisted behind their backs. Richard's face was a mask of utter disbelief. Diane started to cry and plead, the phone clattering from her hand. "Carolyn, it was my brother's idea. He made me do it. Please, please forgive us." In the distance, the unmistakable wail of police sirens was growing closer and closer. I looked down coldly at the man who was once my husband, now whimpering and struggling on the floor of the home he had tried to steal from me. "This time, Richard," I said, my voice clear and ringing with finality, "with trespassing, breaking and entering, and attempted assault, you'll be in jail for a very long time." The charade was finally, truly over. If you are still listening, if you've followed me on this journey up to this point, would you do me a small favor? Please like this video and comment with the number 1 below. It lets me know that you've given me a like, and it tells me that you're right here with me, listening to my story. Your support is a tremendous encouragement, and it gives me the strength to continue. Please, comment with the number 1, and let me tell you what happened next. The aftermath of that rainy night was a media whirlwind. Richard's desperate, violent act had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The police report, combined with the security footage, was the final nail in his coffin. The story went from a messy divorce to a criminal case, and it went viral. Someone, somewhere, created the hashtag #StandStrongCarolyn, and my social media, which I rarely used, was flooded with thousands of messages of support from strangers all over the country. It was overwhelming and surreal, but it was also a strange comfort to know that I wasn't alone in this fight. The divorce trial was, as Mr. Wallace had predicted, surprisingly quick. Richard arrived late, flanked by his parents. In just a few weeks, he seemed to have aged a decade. His expensive suit hung off his thinner frame, his eyes were sunken, and his face was a permanent shade of ashen gray. When he saw me sitting at the plaintiff's table, poised and calm, a flash of pure hatred crossed his gaze, but it was quickly replaced by a raw, undisguised fear. He knew he was facing not only the end of his marriage, but the end of his life as he knew it. His lawyer, a young, out-of-his-depth associate from his father's firm, tried to argue that the money transfers were simply gifts between friends and that Heather was a distant family cousin. But when Mr. Wallace presented the court with the intimate photos from Palm Springs, the explicit text messages, and the receipt from Tiffany's for the $25,000 necklace, even the lawyer was left speechless. The jury's collective gasp was audible. Regarding the falsification of the deed and the forged signature on the mortgage contract, Richard's defense had nothing to say. When the judge, a stern, no-nonsense woman in her 60s, asked Richard directly why he had done it, his answer stunned the entire room into silence. My sister was getting married, and her fiancé's family wasn't contributing anything to their new life," he mumbled, refusing to look at the judge. I wanted to help my family a little. And for that, you falsified legal documents, you forged your wife's signature, and you dissipated hundreds of thousands of dollars of marital assets, the judge asked, her voice severe. Mr. Peterson, as a lawyer yourself, were you not aware of the very serious legal consequences of your actions? Richard lowered his head and said nothing. His mother, sitting in the front row of the courtroom gallery, broke down into loud, hysterical sobs until a bailiff had to escort her out. The final verdict was more than I could have hoped for. The judge granted the divorce, effective immediately. The house on Oakwood Lane was fully and solely awarded to me. Richard was ordered to return the full $330,000 he had transferred to Heather. 70% of all remaining savings and investments in his name were awarded to me as compensation for damages and emotional distress. In addition, Richard had to pay all of my legal fees and court costs, a sum that was well into six figures. As the judge read the verdict, the finality of the gavel falling echoing through the courtroom, Richard's face turned completely ashen, and his father had to physically hold him up. The journalists' cameras flashed non-stop, immortalizing the miserable, defeated sight of the Peterson family for the morning papers. In the separate criminal trial that followed a month later, Richard was found guilty on multiple counts of forgery and bank fraud. He was sentenced to 3 years in a state prison. As I left the courthouse that final day, the bright California sunlight felt like a blessing. Justice, it turned out, wasn't just a concept in a law book. It was real. The first thing I did as a free woman was finalize the sale of the house. The closing was quick and clean. The buyer was a single mother with 2 young children, and her excitement about the backyard and the proximity to the local school was infectious. As she signed the last document, she took my hand. "Carolyn," she said, her eyes kind. "I've seen the news. You're a very brave woman. I want you to know, this house, in my hands, will be filled with nothing but love and laughter." My eyes welled up a little. That was exactly what the house, and I, needed to hear. A week later, I was on a plane, watching the familiar grid of Los Angeles shrink below me. Before everything had fallen apart, a multinational company I'd long admired had been recruiting me for a position. An opportunity had opened up in their Singapore office for a marketing director, overseeing the entire Asia-Pacific region. They renewed their offer, and I accepted without a moment's hesitation. I needed a new beginning, a place where no one knew my name or my painful story. The first few months in Singapore were an exhilarating blur of activity. The work was more challenging than anything I'd ever done, but I threw myself into it, grateful for the distraction. I was leading a new team, developing complex marketing strategies for a dozen different countries, and navigating a new and vibrant culture. On the weekends, instead of moping in my new, sterile apartment, I forced myself to explore. I wandered through bustling hawker centers, tried exotic foods I couldn't pronounce, and made a few new friends from work. For the first time in years, my life was full and dynamic and meaningful, and it was a life I was building entirely for myself, on my own terms. One afternoon, about 6 months into my new life, I received an email from Mr. Wallace. Attached was a small clipping from the crime section of a national newspaper with the headline, "Disgraced Lawyer and Socialite Wife Splits Divorce After Husband's Deed Forgery Scam." In the grainy photo, Richard was being led away in handcuffs, looking pathetic and defeated. I stared at it for a moment, then calmly closed the email and moved it to the trash. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity. Nothing. His story was over. Mine was just beginning. I spent 8 wonderful, healing months in Singapore. My team managed to close 2 of the biggest contracts in the division's history, and the CEO publicly congratulated me at the company's annual meeting. I was thriving. But then, an offer came that I couldn't ignore. The parent company, the massive XG Group, wanted me back in the US. They were creating a new center for the development of female leadership, and they wanted me to be its first director. The salary was double what I was making, and it was a chance to do something truly meaningful. At first, I hesitated. Was I ready to go back to the place that held so many painful memories? Was I ready to be in the same state, the same city, as the man who had tried to destroy me? But as I sat on my balcony overlooking the glittering Singapore skyline, I realized something profound. I wasn't running away anymore. True detachment, true strength, isn't about escaping your past. It's about having the ability to face it head-on and still choose not to look back. I decided to return. My comeback was something I could never have predicted. My story, which I had tried so hard to keep private, had taken on a life of its own. It had become a case study in business schools and law schools, a perfect example of how an educated woman can use the legal system as a weapon to protect her rights and her inheritance. I was invited to speak at forums and leadership conferences. My story, once a source of deep, private pain, had somehow become a source of public inspiration. One night, I was the keynote speaker at a high-level business forum held in a grand ballroom in downtown LA. As I was mingling afterwards, a familiar figure appeared at the ballroom door. It was Richard. He had been released from jail a few months early for good behavior. He was wearing a cheap, ill-fitting suit and holding a pathetic-looking bouquet of grocery store flowers. He had lost a lot of weight, and the confident arrogance he once wore like a second skin was gone, replaced by a deep, weary desperation. "Carolyn," he said, his eyes lighting up with a flicker of hope when he saw me. "I just wanted to congratulate you in person. You look stunning." Security guards started to move toward him, but I held up a hand to stop them. I needed to do this myself. "Richard," I said calmly, my voice even. "Please leave." "I know I don't have the right to see you," his voice cracked, and he took a step closer. I was really wrong. So wrong. Heather ran away with all my money. My mom had a heart attack from the shock and is in the hospital. I've lost my job, my law license. It's my karma. I know that. Seeing him cry, seeing him so broken, didn't evoke any emotion in me. The wound he had carved into my past was so deep that I no longer had the strength to even hate him. "Let's leave the past behind," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I wish you the best, Richard, I truly do. But please, don't come looking for me again." He suddenly dropped to his knees right there on the marble floor of the ballroom. "Give me one more chance, Carolyn. Please. Just one more chance." Security, I turned and called, my voice ringing with a finality that could not be misunderstood. Please escort this gentleman out. As they gently but firmly pulled him to his feet and dragged him away, he struggled, yelling as he turned to look at me one last time. Carolyn, you're a ruthless woman. After all we've been through. I composed myself, raised my head, and returned to the event, the whispers in the ballroom fading behind me. After that night, Richard never appeared in my life again. With the arrival of spring, I bought a beautiful new apartment in LA with a balcony overlooking the city. The day of the signing, I made sure the deed was solely, unequivocally, in my name. That night, I stood on my new balcony, looking out at the endless sea of lights. A year ago, I was still Carolyn Peterson, a trapped and heartbroken wife. Today, I was just Carolyn Miller. My memoirs, titled Rebirth, were about to be published. My editor had recently sent me a note suggesting I add a final chapter on how to build healthy relationships. He wrote, "Many readers will wonder if, after everything you've been through, you still believe in love." I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and on a blank page, I began to write. I believe in love, I typed, the words flowing easily. But I believe more in myself. True security never comes from another's promise, but from the unshakable confidence in your own strength, your own worth, and your own ability to rise from the ashes. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. If any part of it resonated with you, if it gave you a little bit of strength or hope, please consider sharing it. You never know who in your life might need to hear that they are not alone. Take care of yourselves, and never, ever forget your own worth.